We were docked in Southampton, though we just wouldn't be there for long. We were there just to disembark the passengers from the Caribbean crossing. As soon as the last passenger left the ship, we would be setting sail right away. All the crew shore leave was cancelled due to this rapid disembarkation. No passengers would be coming on, just a handful of contractors who were coming on through the crew gangway as the passengers were leaving. We were getting ready for 2 weeks of passenger-free shenanigans as we were heading into our annual 5-yearly refit. All non-essential crew members left with the passengers. After all, they would only get in the way, and this was no paid holiday. The ship had the smallest of crew. The ship looked and felt deserted. There are only 300 of us, including contractors. The rest of the crew would be meeting us in Southampton when we returned to pick them up. The Mighty V would be on a very rare overnighter in Southampton. This would allow all the returning crew time to settle back in and have all the cabins made up ready for the passengers. Those crew members that were on for the refit would be granted shore leave for the night, and that meant hitting the bars and nightclubs. The tannoy for the last group of passengers to disembark was sounded, and we were nearly on our way. I went to the promenade deck and lit a cigarette. The wind started to pick up, and the sky was a deep, dense grey. You could also feel the water at the dock move the ship something chronic. This would be an interesting transit. As soon as the last passenger left the ship and exited the cruise terminal, the captain made the shipwide announcement: "On our way to Hamburg, we will be encountering a storm, and as there are no passengers on board, we will be going full speed. The ride will be bumpy and expect some severe listing. If there is something important that needs to be secured down, now is your time to do it as we leave the sail and speed restrictions within the hour. Don't worry about the furniture, plates, etc., as it's all going in a skip when we reach the dry dock." The tannoy fell silent. There's nothing left for my team to do as our set was secured down last night after the final show. We decided to go into the theatre and start watching movies of our choice on the big screen. The ship's engines powered up, then so did the bow thrusters. We were on our way to the debauchery of a Hamburg refit. Leaving the Solent wasn't too much of an issue, as we were going quite slowly. I made my way down to the officers' mess for one last dinner before they brought it offline ready for the refit. All meals would be in the biggest passenger restaurants so they could conserve power and have all the food in one place. I was told that during refit all the food starts off excellent, then progressively gets worse as the refit goes on, then down to the stage of being barely edible towards the end of the refit. The ship would not be getting any new supplies till we returned to Southampton, and as we didn't take on any supplies just before we left, this would get quite interesting. Dinner for me was a steak for my starter, followed by a steak and chips for my main and a steak for dessert. Some officers were giving me some dirty looks as I placed my order, then both the Canadian and the newsboy copied my order. We assumed that every meal from now on was going to be shitter as we went along, so we would live it up tonight. The officers' mess was based on, so when the chop made its presence, we could see it out the window. It got to the stage that the chop was above the window, and all you could see was the churn as the waves slammed into the sides of the ship. We then started to get bounced around as we were right on the arse end of the ship. As the head of the ship bobbed down, we were flung up. It wasn't too bad though. The newsboy was struggling to keep his dessert steak on his plate. I had already wolfed down my dessert steak and was finding it amusing of watching the newsboy keep his steak still enough to cut it. I went up to the officer's bar and ordered a sleeve of cigarettes. "Sorry bro," said the barman, 2 packets minimum every day from now on." "Why is that?" I said. "We've got to ration them as we will run out before the end of the refit," said the barman. I ordered my 2 packets, then left the officer's mess. I went directly up to the crew bar, and the same thing was going on there. We were only allowed 2 boxes a day, but the crew bar didn't know that I already ordered 2 boxes from the officer's mess. I ordered another 2 boxes and returned to my cabin. I would be the greedy one and started making a stash of fags whilst we were in Hamburg. Every day I would go to the wardroom bar, then go up to the crew bar. This would keep me smoking when the supply just runs out and people are forced to smoke the ship fags like menthols. After a bit of a chillax in my cabin with a few tins of beer, I thought I'd have a walk around the near empty ship. Why not? After all, I was at a loose end and the movies that were playing were not to my taste. I left my cabin and made my way to the crew left, clutching a 4-pack in my hand. I pressed the highest number, which was deck 15. It looked spooky. The lights were out, just the emergency lights were on. I assumed that they wanted to save as much power as possible, as no one was in any cabins, nor was there any entertainment going on, minus the movie playing in the theatre for the crew. I I walked along the corridor following the green neon lights that were designed to guide people towards the muster stations, though I was walking in the opposite direction. I left the habitation section and came out to the open pool deck. It was deserted. Yet again there were only emergency lights on. The wind was howling and the deck was getting peppered with ice cold rain. Fuck this, I thought to myself. I walked under the covered sections towards the aft end. I went through the deserted buffer, yet again only being lit with emergency lights, and made my way to the aft lifts. I pressed deck 18, which was the sky bar. I went in and could see the dark horizon, which was full of stormy chop. Yet again the lights were out, and the only light source was the emergency lights. I stayed for about 2 cans of beer and was just watching how the ship was being bashed around by the sea. From this point of the ship you could see the whole ship being contorted and brutally bashed around by Poseidon's waved minions. If the wind was howling earlier, then now it was a full blown war. I decided to make my way back down to deck 7 and have a smoke along the promenade deck, so I left the sky bar and went to the lift. The short walk was a struggle as I was walking against a mental list that was going on. I pressed the lift call button and waited. The lift arrived and I went in. It took only a minute to get to deck 7. I put a cigarette in my mouth and then went to open the door on the outside. The wind was brutally pushing the door closed, and with all my weight behind the door I could only open it a few centimetres. This was bullshit. So I went to the port side of the ship and then went outside. Opening this door was a piece of piss, though it looked quite dangerous. The railings on the side of the ship were touching the waterline. The ship was listing that much I could hold my hand out and touch the sea. I decided to have my cigarette on this side and kept my back pressed against the bulkhead. This cigarette didn't last long as the wind helped to burn it down quicker. I stubbed the cigarette out on the bulkhead, then went back inside. I struggled to walk along the inside deck due to the major list. I passed the photo gallery and the photo stands were thrown around. With no one to pick them up, it became an obstacle course to avoid them. As I reached the far end of the gallery, I could hear the plates and cutlery falling out the cupboards from the Asian restaurant behind the photo gallery. There was a thud where there was thud after thud after thud, and smash after smash after smash. Yet again there was no one around to deal with this mess. I continued to walk along the deck, and now I was in the mid-entertainment venue. All the tables and chairs were thrown around. This was yet again another obstacle to pass. I should have gone down to the M1 corridor. Oh well. I was here and had to press on. I passed the deck 7 section of the atrium. I looked over the railings and saw yet again tables and chairs strewn around the place on the lower levels. Even the books in the library on the deck 5 section made it into the middle of the floor. I pressed on and passed the forward Spanish-themed Ramblas tapas restaurant. The story was the same as the Asian restaurant. Plates and cutlery was everywhere. Tables and chairs were all over the place. I pressed on and got to the steps leading towards the theatre. There was a brutal smell. I looked down and saw a few puddles of chunder just in front of the theatre steps. Some weak-bellied crew member just brought up his lunch and dinner, the poor bastard, and with no one here to clean it up, this was where it was staying. I climbed the steps to the theatre and saw the movie playing. There was a small handful of crew there. I guess everyone was either at their cabins or in the bar. As I walked down the steps of the auditorium towards the deck 6 section, where I'd slipped backstage and into the corridor towards my cabin. As I approached the stairwell, I could faintly hear calls for help. I went up one deck and back to deck 7. I could hear a muffled cry for help once more. I went to the starboard side to exit to the promenade deck, and the cry for help became stronger. It was coming from behind the door. Some poor cunt was stuck outside, and the wind was simply too strong for them to open the door. I looked through the window and could see a small group of people I've never seen before shitting themselves. With all my strength, I braced my leg onto the bulkhead behind me and used my weight to force the door open. There was enough purchase for the stranded people to get to safety. After the last one was in, I let go and the door slammed shut. I'm guessing that you guys are the contractors, I said. Good, you all owe me a beer for rescuing you. I ushered them up one more deck and they all bought me a beer for their appreciation. And that was the start of the fun times of refit.